Hello, welcome to the People Profit Podcast, the show where we flip the script on traditional business thinking and prove that when you put people first, profits follow. I'm Sandra Coker, your guide on this journey to more engaged teams, loyal customers, and a healthier bottom line. These episodes are brought to you by Human Power Solutions, helping organizations unlock the human potential that powers performance. Whether you're a leader, an HR pro, or a curious change maker, buckle up. We're diving into fresh stories, real-world strategies, and a few laughs along the way. Ready to turn your workplace into a profit-powered people machine? Let's get started. We have the privilege of having Brooks Moore as our guest today, and he's the Senior VP Digital for BonneMaison Incorporated. Brooks is fabulous. I've known him for just a few weeks, and when I met him, I knew he needed to be a guest on our show. He works with companies and leaders on their executive presence, on their stage presence, and how they communicate within their organizations and out in the public. Very excited for our conversation, and for you emerging leaders and younger leaders out there, this episode is definitely for you. Welcome, Brooks. How are you today?
Fantastic.
And I wanted to first start off a little bit about what you do at BonneMaison, because I think people are going to be curious about what that's all about. So can you share a little bit about your business?
Sure. Bon Maison is a production company, and we do all kind of different projects for clients. Typically, a client will interact with, and we will talk about what their needs are. And then we will kind of sit down and try to come up with a solution to their needs, whether it's a marketing need, they need to get more sales, or talk about the airport and why it's a great airport to go to, that kind of thing. And we have clients that we've had for a long time. Some of my roles at the company are as a director, producer, as well as a narrator, and leading the team in the production aspect of the company. And we do script to screen for people. So we come in and do it start to finish.
I love that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on our podcast is the communication piece of what happens in leadership. And when I met you a few weeks ago, I loved your voice. Like you have a TV voice for sure, which is amazing. But the communication of being able to translate that message to clients, be able to voice the leader's words and what they want people to understand. I think it really does translate to leadership, because as you're communicating with your employees, with people that work for you, that work in your company, you're kind of selling a little bit about what your company's doing. Would you agree with that?
Sure. And you're creating an environment that reaches out to your clients. So starting with that leadership from the top and getting the right people on your team, I call it in the bus. And I don't want to make rules for the 5% that don't belong on the bus. I want them to leave the bus, and we'll just take our bus and go out and have a great team to represent us all well. Because if you have weakness on your team, then it brings everybody down. Yeah. So it's really important to have a strong team that has the ideals and has the thoughts that you have as a leader, and you want to keep that going and give that to your clients.
Yeah. And I think just having that kind of communication and that messaging that is consistent throughout the organization is really, really a key. And I was interested reading your bio that, you grew up around entrepreneurs and coaches and were really exposed to leadership at a pretty early age. How do you think that has shaped, the work that you've done throughout your career? And then, with this company, what do you think about that? Like someone that's gotten an early exposure to someone who's maybe a little bit later in life that hasn't had that kind of exposure?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I had the opportunity to be growing up in an environment, like you said, with entrepreneurs. And I would say at different stages of my childhood, I might not have been the best at something. Like I grew up on a horse farm and we rode and competitively rode equestrian and things like that. I might not have been the best at that, but I was constantly recommended or just to do what you want, find your passion. So I was constantly by my family encouraged to find my passion. And so it wasn't the horse event and the equestrian events, although I was involved in that for quite a long time. And I started working, announcing at horse shows. So that's kind of how I started that. And I ended up at a young age being president of the Horse Show Association. And so that leadership kind of came naturally. And I think in working with people and trying to get the best out of someone that might not be like you was something that I learned at a young age. But I would have to say there was some blind spots there for me that much later on, having Madi, the president of the company, and also my wife, bring in that expertise to help us understand each other's personalities and where that difference is. Because, you might have someone and you might just think, they're not too nice, or they're a jerk, or I don't like how they work. And so by understanding each other, it gives us the ability to work with someone else. And there's this commonality that we want to come to the center and not be so far apart.
Yeah.
And that's a really great area that she's even helped with, I think, in the last 20 some years that has made us even stronger.
I love that. I think about a meeting that I had. I'm a chair of a couple of committees, and we have some people on these committees that communicate differently. And I find myself oftentimes playing the mediator because there's friction or there's, conflict. And I'm like, it's not that they're not going in the same direction. It's just that you communicate differently. Maybe someone is shy. They're not comfortable in some of these different spaces, and just kind of helping people to kind of take that step back a minute and don't be so defensive all the time. We all don't communicate the same way. So I want to kind of circle back though for a second, because you were 21 when you became the president of the Horse Association, right?
Yeah.
And I think for younger leaders, I want to kind of frame this a little bit. How, when you're 21 and it's obviously an association that's been around a while, like as a young leader, how do you help to build credibility and influence at that age? In that type of an organization, like what kind of advice would you give a young leader facing that kind of a challenge?
Well, I think that it's a thought process. Number one, it's a mindset. And I didn't even have to think about the mindset because I kind of grew up with a mindset. Like I said, I wasn't the best at everything that I did, but there were certain things that I was really good at. And I decided and I was encouraged to pursue those activities. So I was president of the Horse Show Association with people much older than me. But I think in them seeing me and that I could listen to them and hear different ideas and opinions and make my own decision based on different input, that they felt they could be heard. And if you're young, if you give someone the feeling that you care what they say and you care to listen and you care for them to be heard, you have a much stronger chance of being a good leader than not listening and not letting someone be heard. And I think the other aspect is, your word. Your word is golden. And if you say that you're going to do this or you're going to take this commitment on, maybe putting on the association annual banquet. That's probably how I started at 19 or something. And putting on that, people see that you have the ability. So then the next thing you do, you start managing events, and people from all over the East Coast come to your events, and they see that you have good people that you've hired for the event, judges, good personnel. And you get this reputation that, Brooks runs a great horse show and runs a great equestrian program. So I found that I've always been a really curious person. And although I didn't read a lot of books when I was in my early 20s on management style,
Yeah.
I learned a lot from my dad and mom. And I was always have been that good mediator that could take two people that were very far apart and try to bring them together. What's the common ground we can agree on, and can we come up with a solution here, because we need to. And one person being so far on the left or the right on the other side, we need to get together and make something happen. So I think that's a tactic that I learned early on from my parents.
And you think about the world today, right? People are on opposite sides, and bringing people together, what a skill that is, and what a skill that's needed. And when we think about the younger leaders, and you think about your younger self in that leadership role, what's something that you believed back then that you no longer think is true?
That's a really amazing question. I've been looking at things lately a lot and kind of putting labels on myself and sharing the label with other people to see if it resonates with them. And some of the labels might sound, I don't know boy, are you really saying that? So I will say this. I am a pleaser. And I think a lot of people in business are pleasers. And so I would say some of the things that I would tell myself, that you don't have to please everybody. That's okay. It's not letting someone down. It's just saying no. Yeah. And so if saying no helps you continue doing a great job in the things that you're doing, and you don't have too much piled on because you keep saying yes, then I would recommend that, as well as having a chance to refill your tank. I grew up, like I said, on a horse farm, and I didn't know what burnout meant. The reason was I grew up with burnout.
Yes.
And getting up at 6 a.m, taking care of the horses, feeding them, going to school, coming home. Maybe after I participated in sports at school, coming home and riding, and then taking care of the horses at night. And then on the weekends, we'd get up at 4 a.m. and go to a horse show on Saturday and Sunday. So until I went to this workshop about 2 years ago, I didn't know what burnout was, because I lived it my entire life.
Interesting.
And so what I have done since that time is make sure that I have time to refill my tank. And everyone has a different way to refill their tank. Mine is maybe having a little time by myself playing piano or writing a song or, different things like that. And that's been really helpful for me. And that's something I'd recommend to someone, my younger self, to make sure you're refilling your tank. And it's important because it's your health. It's your health, and you can't run on empty for too long.
Well, the conference that you and I were just at, a few weeks ago, kind of reset me a little bit with, running constantly. So I'm actually incorporated 10 minutes of meditation in the morning. And if my daughter's listening, she will be cheering, because they're always telling me how hard I work, and that I need to start to take a breath. And I like you, been working since I was 9, and you just go, 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 go. And I find that the younger leaders now don't want that life. They want to be able to enjoy they're working to live. They're not living to work. And I find that very interesting. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of us that are our age are kind of living that burnout life and aren't taking the time for ourselves.
Yeah, and it's really important to always be learning.
Mhm.
And I was at the same conference you were at, and this person spoke. And if I just was at that conference and heard that person speak about taking that time, writing your spouse a note in the morning, and just keeping track of these little things, they have made a complete difference in my life. And that was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I'm always learning. I am always, I wouldn't say that because I'm learning doesn't mean I'm not satisfied. I am very happy, but I am open to learn
Yeah.
and not say, oh no, I got this. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, this might be something that might be really helpful. And if you keep an open mind, you can constantly learn.
Yeah. So my younger son is 25, and we were having a conversation the other night, actually, I think just last night. And he's a mover and a shaker. He likes to do stuff. And he just got back from Houston. And, we were just talking about he's single. I'm like, you can do whatever you want to do. And he's like, I don't know why I just can't be happy like in one spot. And I'm like, it's not that you're not happy. I'm like, you're just looking for the next thing, and kind of reframing that. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with like wanting to learn more and experience more. You should. And I think in leadership, taking risks, right? So, when you think about your leadership journey and the people that have mentored you and have coached you, what kind of risks have you taken that have really worked out well that, or even a risk now that you would never have taken when you were younger?
Well, I would look at that in a way, and I hope I'm answering your question properly. A lot of people took a risk in me when I was younger and gave me an opportunity to show what I could do and be able to succeed from that. Someone gave me that first opportunity to announce that horse show. I'll never forget the guy's name, Gary Baker. My first paid video project was on a horse park. Charlie Ziff gave me that opportunity. So what's really fulfilling is when someone gives you a chance and you take it and run with it. And what I've learned is now I'll take a chance on someone else to give it back.
Okay.
We have a guy that was fresh out of college. We hired him. And he wasn't from, I would say, a school, like a big film school. So, we weren't sure, but there was other attributes about him that were really good. And so we decided to take a chance on him. And he's been here 15 years.
Oh, okay.
He's my number one right-hand guy. He started and, he didn't want to do certain things because he wasn't sure he could be successful with it. Like, for instance, budgeting. Now, I don't do budgets. Dave does all the budgets because he's learned. And he's the type of person that is very different than me. I am kind of creative, a little disorganized. He is an Eagle Scout, very by the book. And one of our first workshops that Marty brought in someone to help us learn about each other, I had asked Dave to set up a camera that morning and film the workshop. So just somewhere along the line in the workshop, I think the facilitator asked, well, is there anything that, someone could do to help you out? And he said, well, I would really like to have known the day before so I could be fully prepared in the morning. If I was told the day before that I need to film the next day, then I would like that better. That would make me feel more prepared. Wow. If we didn't have that conversation, I would never have known my way of working isn't always helpful to other people. So how hard is it for me to say the day before, hey, Dave, we're going to be filming tomorrow? Because of that wonderful dialogue and communication that the facilitator helped us with and learning about each other's personalities, I would not have had that insight. I mean, Dave was the type of guy that if you ask him how his weekend was, he'd be like, well, that's kind of like my business, right? Initially when he came, just because that's how he grew up.
Right.
And, he was a tree when someone would give him a hug. Now he leans in for a hug. Now he loves to share. He has 2 girls now. It's beautiful to see how people grow and how they've grown along with you. They've helped you grow too, because we can all learn from each other. And I just think that's one of the beautiful things about really nurturing culture in a business and training that next generation and giving opportunities that I was given because people believed in me. And that's what we try to do here.
Running a business is hard. Developing your people shouldn't be. At Human Power Solutions, we act as your outsourced chief learning officer, designing custom learning and development experiences that actually move the needle. No fluff, no cookie-cutter workshops, just results. Whether your people need better communication, stronger leadership, or less burnout, we provide strategic solutions that align with your goals and keep your team moving forward. Visit hpowersolutions.com and unlock your team's full potential without disrupting operations.
So many great nuggets out of that. So our book, this book, People Profit, is really about that internal culture. When you're taking care of the people inside of your organization, then you have success outside of your organization. And what you just demonstrated, what you illustrated, was the fact that you took a chance on someone. You also spent the time developing them, training them, making sure they have the skills, and they're still with you 15 years later. Are you a huge, large company?
No, we're a company of 8 people.
Right.
I mean,
right?
And the other thing that we do is kind of like this golden rule. If you, it's treat others the way you want to be treated. So we always, even though we're a small company, we always decided that it was really important, the benefits that we gave our employees. So we paid 100%, and we still do, of their health insurance premium.
No.
They don't have to put any copay into that. Yeah, they'll have deductibles and stuff with their insurance, but we also have a 4% match for their 401k program. We have unlimited vacation, which we started years ago before it became a popular thing.
Yeah.
And so really treating others, and we pay well. Treating others the way you want to be treated. If I wasn't paying people well and I didn't give them good benefits, and maybe I had, they could see I was spending all of the profits on myself, I don't think we'd have the same outcome. So it's worth it to me to grow us all together. And as we grow, everybody benefits from it.
And also, it's not just the money. You can tell by your conversation, it's the caring that goes into it. So you're working with your wife, Mari, and I've met her, and she's lovely. She's actually becoming one of my favorite people. So what is that? And this is her company. So what is that like for you?
So it's not for everybody, working with your spouse. And a lot of people tell me that they couldn't do it. I think one of the things you have to have is ground rules. And I totally respect Mari. I might have a client and she might have a client. And when I have my client, I make the call with how that project should go. If she has a client, she makes the call with how the project should go. So there's a mutual respect. And that's the biggest thing. There is a mutual respect. Yes, we've had to put in guardrails for ourselves. Like, you know what? Let's not talk about work after this time at night. Let's let's not get caught up in this or that. And so I think, we've learned that because sometimes it doesn't work. And we're very, very different people, which is good.
Yeah.
I always ask people, would you be married to the person that you're married to now if you knew what you knew now when you got married to them? So that would be 29 years ago. Would I still have married Marty? And people are like waiting for me to say, well, no, I wouldn't. But the thing is, I wouldn't know what I know today without being married to Marty, because I've been on a journey with her together through thick and thin, through love and madness and sadness and things. And so I am who I am today as a result of making that choice 29 years ago. And I am happy for making that choice and glad that that's the choice I made and that we work together. There's nothing like working on a wonderful project that has meaning. It creates impact with others, and you're telling this story in a way that people can relate to. And, working together like that is really, really impactful.
Yes. And that kind of brings me to one of the other points that we talked about that we kind of talked about prior to the airing of this is, you believe that vulnerability is a strength, being vulnerable, being authentic. Yet, I walk into so many workplaces and, we don't talk about feelings. We're here to do our job, What do you think it will take for that perception to shift? And how do you think that leaders can set the tone for lack of a better term, the psychological safety of people in the organization?
I don't know if I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older. I think I've always been not afraid to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And there were certain things that I wasn't vulnerable about, I would say. I had I would come home and drink. For about 7 years, I would do this and drink too much. I would kind of like check out. And what would happen, nobody knew this outside of my family because I could go out to a party and I'd have a couple of drinks and I'd drive home. But this was like a secret. And there was shame involved in that. So once I took the plunge of deciding not to drink anymore, I shared that story. And so I'm being vulnerable. Is it really vulnerability? I don't care. I don't even think about it.
Uh-huh.
But being vulnerable might open up someone else's door and have them maybe think about what you've gone through, how that might apply in their life in some way.
Uh-huh.
And then they'll ask you questions. Well, is that hard? Is that, what is that like? What did you do? How did you decide not to check out? Did you set up boundaries for yourself? Because, you were using alcohol as like a medication, basically, in a way. So, I'm open, and I think I've gotten more open because of that, and not afraid to share and be vulnerable. And I think there's a certain strength in that people are not sure of when they're not vulnerable because they're afraid someone might look at them in a bad way.
Uh-huh.
But the truth of the matter is, I found that people look at you in a stronger way because you're willing to share. You're willing to share ideas. You're willing to share your faults.
Uh-huh.
And you might ask them, hey, can you keep an eye on me on that? I remember you saying something to my wife about, it sounds like you have this idea you can't, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And that resonated with her and hit this chord with her that's on her mind now, not to use those words. And it's like, I kind of feel like because you did that and you weren't afraid to speak up and say something in very nice way. If I had said that, it would have come off completely differently, and it probably wouldn't have come off as nice, and it would not have been heard.
Mm.
But the way you said that, then Marty has that relationship now with you, that there's this trust factor that Sandy will call me out on my
Mm. Yep.
Now,
Yeah.
that might sound harsh, but that's all done in love.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that Sandy will help me when I'm blind to my behavior. And I really appreciate Sandy helping me on that. So that's what I think vulnerability is. And it's nothing to be afraid of. And it actually makes you stronger, and it makes the people around you stronger, that they feel like, wow, he's not afraid to share that with me.
Yeah.
I wonder what I could learn there.
It's so true. The authenticity of the leaders are, when I talk to our facilitators and we talk to different people, even when I work a lot with the younger generation of leaders and up and comings. And my line to them, one of my lines to them is, a CEO is a person. They get up in the morning, they take a shower, they have their coffee, they feed their dog. I'm like, there really are no differences between you and them. It's just their level of experience. And the CEOs, I say the same thing. You're no better or worse than the people that are working, on your teams, and I feel like that's missing so much. And what you just shared, I really hope will help someone that's listening, because, you're not the only person that, goes home and, used to go home and pop down, whatever. Right. And I think if we're more open about that, then that creates more trust,
I think you're absolutely right. And, I see it sometimes, and Marty will say to me, well, how come someone didn't say something to me? And there just is a thing about CEOs, I think, heads of companies, that people might be afraid. But I encourage her, well, why don't you have a conversation with that person? And just be you.
Uh-huh.
And open up the dialogue that person will feel comfortable sharing with you and won't hold back, because that's what happens when a company's going sideways. People aren't communicating. They're not communicating because they're seeing, the people that are working for you are seeing it from the trenches.
Uh-huh.
And if they're not communicating with leadership because they're afraid the reaction they're going to get, they're afraid maybe the leadership's going to blow up or tell them they're wrong,
Uh-huh.
have that dialogue and help them feel listened to, no matter if you agree to it or not,
Uh-huh.
that you're listening and you welcome that dialogue.
So you're actually talking a lot about respect from both sides, right?
Yes.
So it's the leader respecting the voice and the opinion of the person that's working for them or talking with them, but it's also about the person that's coming back to them, respecting their role. Somehow you come to this mutual respect of, let's hear each other and figure out where to go from here.
Right. And, I have not everyone is comfortable with it, so you have some people that are really kind of closed off but they'll usually share with someone at the company.
Yeah.
So you got to have that right-hand person that people will feel that they can communicate to. And that right-hand person knows that they can bring anything to me.
Uh-huh.
I will listen to them, whether it's hard, whether it's bad, whatever it is, they have my trust and I have their trust. So sometimes you need that bridge, but you can work on it. You can create that bridge.
So that kind of brings me to the emotional intelligence piece, right? Because if you're a leader and you have that fear that you brought the aura of fear, right, to your employees where we can't say anything to that person. How do you get, an autocratic leader or someone that isn't as, they're just, you need to have them, right? You need to have all the leadership styles in your company. You just have to in order to get things done. If you had leaders like me all the time, then nothing would get done because I'd be looking at the next shiny object, right? But those autocratic leaders who are very process driven and, like, let's just go to work, that style doesn't work anymore. And when we think about emotional intelligence, how do you help people become self-aware?
Another really interesting idea. Education has come a long way over the years, especially with kids that have maybe dyslexia, maybe they have ADD, whatever. And what our educators have done is develop different ways for them to learn so that by the time they finish, whether it's middle school, elementary school, high school, they can move into society with this skill set that they don't feel dumb because they couldn't do this or I don't get that. And I have this course called Unleash Your Voice where I help people. And people said to me, well, how can you help someone who's tone deaf about how to use their voice? And I say, well, let's come up with another technique. If we use the piano as a guide, I'll play a note, and I don't expect you to tell me what note. It's not that complicated, but can you hum along with that note? Let's try that to start. So I think what's important is that we change the way we educate people that have a deficit in that area, and we teach them in ways they can learn it and they can see it. And that's kind of, a number of years ago, we had a person from MIT giving us a workshop, and she said, what's your purpose? And I said, my purpose is to help people see things that they never thought possible and they didn't even realize. And that's my purpose. So that's, like I said, educating someone that has a deficit or missing something. We all have blind spots. I have blind spots. So if I can help them see that blind spot and see that they can overcome that blind spot and have vision in that area, that's what is important. And I believe can be done.
That's great. I'm just my mind is spinning right now. So you had so many great insights today of everything that we've talked about. Was there an influential person that comes to mind as being kind of who you model your leadership style after, or someone that you really admired that kind of got you down to where you are today, keeping employees for 15 years and stay married for 29?
Well, I had a company before that I was the CEO of, and had a partner in that company. And there were certain things that, I couldn't do because we were kind of equal partners. And so I learned something from that. I would say that I try to constantly learn, and there's people that have been brought in my life along the way that I'm forever grateful and thankful for. Number one, that gave me an opportunity. The guy that gave me an opportunity to narrate TV shows on Discovery, Steve Burns, guy, I'll never forget that guy. And look, when I was young, there was another person that we would go to this group thing together, and he was all big on Tony Robbins, And I saw, he's getting all these books and cassettes and all this stuff. And, it seemed like it lasted for like 3 months and nothing happened. And honestly, I thought Tony Robbins was kind of cocky. And I really, which is ignorant on my part, and I'll just say it, and I'm being vulnerable. I'm just telling you that was ignorant at the time. Now, later in life, Madi was part of this EO group, and someone talked about how they really were impacted by some of his events. So she said, let's do this. And I did, and her whole family did. And it was a road to something new in many areas. I wouldn't be in the edge with you without being introduced 1 year ago to Tony and his partner, Dean, in the mastermind program. So I think there probably isn't one person I could say, but I'm like a sponge and absorb a lot of things from a lot of people and talk to a lot of people about how they're doing it. And I'm also not afraid to share what my idea is. And it might be an idea that might be a helpful thing. And I'll say it in a way that they can think about it and do something, or they don't have to. It's okay. It's not about me, right? It doesn't make me feel better because they did something I said or not. It's okay. I have to be okay with myself and not rely on others to fill my tank.
That's great. That's great. I just loved this conversation so much. I'm so privileged. I feel so privileged to be in that edge group with you and with Madi and so many others. But this conversation has been so rich, and I'd love to, how do people get in contact with you if they're interested in the work that you're doing, helping with the messaging around inside companies, outside companies? How do people get in touch with you?
So people can get in touch with me at brooksmore.com, my website, brooksmore.com, or they can go to our Bon Maison, the production company website, brooks@bonmaison.com. And I have some programs to help people with unleashing your voice, whether it's for executives who want to be more impactful with how they deliver a message, or people that want to, think about a career in the voice business. That's another option. So I've been working with people, and what I try to do, and this is probably what I think is unique a little bit about me, is that I come from things from different perspectives. So from a director's perspective, I am seeing everything and I'm seeing what's going on. From a communications perspective, I am communicating with others and seeing how that is interpreted. So I'm getting people to communicate in a way as a director to impact, and I'm also a part of that. And everyone has a unique gift, their voice, their style, their skill, and they were made uniquely. And I never try to make anyone me. I try to make them the best self that they can be.
Well, thank you so much for being on the People Profit podcast. I truly appreciate your time, your insight, the conversation. I hope that the listeners out there, especially our young leaders that are listening, you got some great nuggets out of today. So we'll drop all of your contact information below in the channel. And thank you again so much. And I look forward to seeing you in June, you and Madi in June.
Thank you, Sandy. It's really been a privilege to be with you today on the podcast and to meet you like 3 weeks ago. And I feel like you've been this long lost friend that is now in my life. And I'm just so thankful for it.
Me as well. Feel the same way. Thank you again so much. Have a great day.
You too.
That's a wrap on this episode of the People Profit Podcast. If you found a nugget of wisdom or even just a spark of inspiration, share the love, subscribe, leave us a review, and pass the episode along to a colleague who's ready to build a people-first culture. Big thanks to our sponsor, Human Power Solutions, for championing workplace where humans thrive and profits rise. Want to learn how they can energize your team? Head over to hpowersolutions.com to get started. I'm Sandra Coker, reminding you that when you invest in people, you invest in profit. See you next time.